Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce and another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond compare.
Jetzt kommt das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von Inzo an Götze.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a goal!
Welcome back to Dortmund Dispatch. Today I'm joined by Brian, and we're going to be breaking down a dominant win against Union Berlin. But first, how was your weekend? It kind of snowed a little bit in New York, I heard.
Yeah, we got battered actually. It's I think it was supposed to be somewhere between 13 to 18 by us. It was definitely over a foot when I went out yesterday, but we definitely got snowed in. So I was work from home today as well, so very thankful for the precipitation to have me be able to chill today, or chill as in like not have to commute. But
yeah, my family lives up by you, so it was 18 inches per rumor, per my sources, I should say.
It's more than it's been in a very long time, but
Yeah.
I'm happy with it. Snow day plus Dortmund win. What more could I ask for?
Yeah, we didn't get quite that much, but I'm not complaining. And when it rains, it pours, and Dortmund poured on some scoring as they beat Union Berlin 3-0.
That
Great
they
fun,
did.
Personally. What were your thoughts on this match?
I think it was a very, I guess the word that comes to mind is like workman performance. Like I feel like they worked very hard for the 3 points here. Obviously very happy we were able to score the 3 goals. The first one, obviously, I'm not going to say lucky, but comes from the penalty, and Emre Can's able to put it away. And, of course, Maxi Bayer scored as well. So something I'll get into a little bit later as well. But, yeah, I mean, happy with the result. It's a good bounce back from the defeat to Tottenham. And it shows that with 11 men, we can do a lot more on the pitch than when we go down with the red card, which is obvious to say. But sometimes teams do play better when they're a man down. So, but, yeah, no, just happy that we were able to bounce back and get the result that we needed, narrow the gap a little bit. What about you? What were your thoughts?
I personally love the scoreline. Love a 3-0. Very enjoyable to watch. However, as Dortmund Dispatch's resident stats nerd, I heard people saying, like, oh, it's nice to play, like, a straightforward game for, like, once. And
Far from straightforward, but
against Union, like, this is not a straightforward game. I'm glad that you realized it, because there were people that were saying, like, oh, this was a nice, simple 3-0 win. Like, this was a decent performance. This was like a coin flip game, though. Like, if you look at the stats, you look at the chances, like, Borussia Dortmund, aside from the penalty, barely created over 1 open play XG, which, like, I wouldn't care too much about with the penalty and scoring so early against a team like Union, given they're a very good defensive team. So I don't want to be too critical there. But then on the other end of the pitch, defensively, particularly on set pieces, like Union are a team that are a little bit more counterattacking, set piece reliant, but they still suck overall at attacking. Like, this is not a good attacking team. And to concede like over 1.24 XG, like, that's not a big number, but like, that's bad. That's not good against a team that is so bad going forward. Like, you have to be better. Our set piece defending in this match, it's not good enough. And, like, you don't want to let, like, the outlier events, like, there's so few goals in soccer. You don't want to let a goal define how you think about a performance. Like, you want to remember, like, okay, 3 points, like, we can enjoy it. We can have fun. But, like, in terms of your thinking about how well Borussia Dortmund is performing, you don't want to focus on the events, because then you would think that we were horrific against St. Pauli. St. Pauli had like 0.5 XG in that game. They scored 2 goals. Great for them. I hope their fans enjoyed the 2 goals. And I, as a fan, I hated them. But I looked overall at the performance and I was like, that is a lucky penalty to win at the end of the game. But even before that, it was just what Dortmund deserved. Like, they were constantly creating chances in that match, and they were dominating the play. And in this match, they didn't really do that, Brian. They did not. So I enjoyed the goals, but this is like a Maxi Bayer 84th minute strike away on like not that big a chance from being a lot like not necessarily nervy, but from getting into like a little hairy of a situation there.
I mean, yeah, you definitely mentioned the set pieces. That's something that, we've seen Dortmund have issues with for some time now. Sometimes, obviously, better. At least I think they have gotten better since seasons past. Doesn't mean that they're perfect, obviously. But yeah, I guess that's why I kind of use the word workman, because they did have to work for it. Yes, it was a 3-0, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was an easy result by any means. Once again, I do think that penalty kind of did crack the game open a little bit for Dortmund. So yeah, I think overall it is a good response. Everyone did show energy, passion on the pitch, and I think these are things that we needed to see because, looking back at the Tottenham game earlier in the week, we didn't see that same level of intensity. In part, obviously, once again, because the team got taken down to 10 men, and that you just can't, right? But overall, I'm just happy that we did get the 3 points. This hopefully does give them the confidence to bounce back. We do have quite a few games coming up that could very much help us build on this. So yeah, I mean, I'm just going to be happy with the result at this point in time.
Yeah, Union actually created more big chances than us in this match. They had about 5 or 6 shots within about like 8 or 9 yards of the goal. That's really actually what Dortmund have been good at preventing this season, but not in this one.
And so apparently it was 4 big chances, and they missed all 4. So
well,
we did
keep the clean sheet, Brian.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm getting at. Like we did get there's I guess a certain degree of luck that's involved in it as well, and the fact that they ended up having these chances obviously means kind of like what you were saying is defensive worries, So
yeah, and I mean, shout out Gregor Kobel because 3 of the chances they put on target, and all 3 of them were like towards the corner of the goal. So like last match against St. Pauli, Gregor Kobel, concedes some shots that like end up hitting the side netting, but they cross the goal line towards the middle of the goal. In this match, there's 3 saves he makes that are essentially like coin flip or worse, or like worse odds than a coin flip in terms of us conceding. Like there's an Illich chance at 0.61 expected goals on target. There's a Leite chance at 0.81, and then there's another Illich chance at 0.51 expected goals on target. And that's 3 humongous saves right there from Gregor Kobel, because that just goes to show you like how different this match could have been if their goalie had saved like 3 post-shot like 2-3 goals, whatever. It's such a different match. Instead, their goalie concedes about 0.8 goals more than you would expect, and our goalie saves about 2 more than you expect. And if you subtract 0.8 goals from Dortmund and you give them 2, you're looking at a game that's very, very close. So like literally just the quality of the goalkeepers on the day was kind of the difference in this one. Or you could say the quality of the finishing for Dortmund was a lot better. You can't even say the finishing was better. Dortmund's finishing was very good, and our goalkeeper stepped up because their finishing was good, but our goalie was better in this one.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting as well because not often do you get to say it, and let me, I guess, caveat this by saying obviously this was an away game for Dortmund, but not often do you get to say that a team spends more time in the opposition half than Dortmund themselves do. In this case, if you look at the amount of passes that were like basically in comparison to like in the opposition half, Union had 122 in our half, and we only had 93 total. So the ball is spending a lot more time in the Dortmund half, and yeah, I just found that interesting as well. It shows just a little bit more about how Union was able to, I'm not gonna say dominate necessarily, but able to like put us under pressure. So.
Yeah, but I think that's almost goes down to the Kovac game plan is like Union are probably so uncomfortable to have that much of the ball. Like they're so reliant on 2 things. It's counterattacks and set pieces. And we basically took out their ability to counterattack. So almost all their shots except one came off set pieces. Their only other shot came off a counterattack, coincidentally. Um, so basically, Kovac completely took away one of the two phases of play in which Union can threaten you. And what that essentially allows you to do is put all their players in positions they're not comfortable in. So Union aren't very comfortable getting counterattacked. And that's because they don't really get counterattacks because they sit so deep and they're always the ones countering. They don't really push very high. And so you're able to play this completely different match. Union have no creative players. Like, they are literally, it's cross and inshallah. Like, that is all they have. And in this match, we were kind of just taking away their ability to even get into the right areas to cross from, like having to play these deeper crosses. It's very hopeful, and it didn't really work out for them. And they kind of were reliant on set pieces, whether it be from corner kicks or just us conceding some fouls. But overall, I would say the game plan, like, you can't say it completely worked, but like the elements of it worked enough to where Dortmund was able to put themselves in a position to win. And you could also say from the XG, like, it's only that low because we scored in the 10th minute, so you don't want to be too critical there. But let's get a post-match quote from the man himself. Niko Kovac stated at the press conference, "I think we put in a very strong performance against Union Berlin. We knew exactly what to expect, a tough game, a team capable of putting us under pressure from the first minute to the last minute. The team immediately reacted to what we hadn't done well in the first half in London. We embraced the fight, ramped up the intensity and aggression, and at times we even played some really good football. The first 20 minutes were solid. Then Union got more into the game. There were a lot of set pieces, corners. That's always dangerous, but overall, I'm very pleased with the performance, and this win is well deserved." So, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I do agree with him. I think it is a well-deserved win. Once again, it was a win that the team had to graft for. And it's kind of like what we already talked about. You know, it was a good reaction. Not taking into account, obviously, the difficulty of it, they were able to persevere. They were able to come through, get the 3 points, and react to that loss against Spurs. So overall, I do think it was a strong performance. And just because it wasn't easy, I guess, doesn't mean that, you know, it wasn't a well put in effort, you know? So I'm happy with it. And I do agree with him.
Yeah, I agree overall. I think before we go into our star of the week and touch on the Spurs game briefly, I just want to say, last year I was pretty negative on a certain Carney Chukwuemeka. But this year, I'm like in. I'm in. I'm believing. How do you feel?
I mean, his impact in the last couple of games has shown, you know, promise. I mean, at the end of the day, I've always said that I think that this is a player with talent. I think that he's shown it in spurts. Right now, the spurts of talent that he's showing are really more pivotal to us. I mean, scoring last-minute goals, creating chances, coming in as quite an effective sub as of right now. It all points, you know, signs pointing in the right direction. I think the more minutes he gets and the more time he gets, the more he can stay fit. I do think that he'll continue to grow into an exciting player for us. So, yeah, I mean, happy.
Yeah, last year my issue was he was never playing, and when he was playing, he was not impressive. And the numbers don't really, you know, like, I'm saying this, but it's also like I'm saying this immediately after FBref lost a lot of their data. So, like, how accurate am I being? Because we all know I have no ball knowledge. It's all spreadsheet knowledge. And I've lost my spreadsheets, so I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but, like, just from an eye test, I feel like when Carney's out there, he's doing good things. But that even the stats would be a little biased here because of that massive chance he had at the end of the one game to equalize. I think it was against Frankfurt, because that's like a .9 XG chance, which makes his XG per 90 look a lot better than it is. But he just looks like he's doing productive things out there, and I want to see him in midfield. I'm really interested in that. I know based off the numbers in the squad and like how many players we have in different positions, we need him a little bit more in attack maybe, and that's clearly where Kovac has seen him, and like maybe he can turn into like one of these 10 forward hybrids. But I'm very interested to see what he would do as like an attacking 8. So yeah, that's where I am with Carney. I am excited. I want and feel like he deserves to see more minutes. I want to see that, and he deserves it.
So I wonder then, if you're saying you'd want to see him as an attacking 8, how would you line up the midfield then?
I'd put him next to Job or Nemecha, and if it's Nemecha, I'm like, literally chill. Like, make sure if you cross the halfway line that there are how many outfield players are there? You need to have 6 players in front of you before you cross midfield. Sorry, I had to do the math there. So maybe, yeah, it would be 6 because he's 1, and then you have the 3 defenders. So like, basically, if a center back is in front of you, do not cross the half. Like, stay with the back line. But otherwise, you can push up a little bit, but don't go crazy. And like, I think Chuck, like, defensively has never been a liability. I just want to, if I'm playing him as an 8, I'd give him a little bit more license to push forward because we've seen him as a box crasher this year.
I was going to say, you'd want to see him do more of that box crashing.
Yeah, he's tough as a box crasher because he's so big and his touch is so good that he gets the ball in his feet and he creates problems. I think he could have a lot better end product if his brain matched his technique at this point, which isn't to say he's a dumb player. I just think it's like he is like his decision making is a little slow right now, and that's probably because he's used to playing a little bit deeper than getting the ball as a striker. But I think just the problems he creates from being able to have the ball at his feet for so long, because it's not like he's losing it immediately. Like, it's almost he's so comfortable receiving the ball and having the ball at his feet under pressure that he can just hold on to it for a little bit too long. And sometimes that creates problems where like they try and half clear it and they pass it to a free guy on our team in the box who takes a shot, stuff like that. But he just creates chaos when he has the ball in the box. I don't know. Like, it's just 100%. A fun skill set.
Yeah, and I mean, just like the dribbling that he's shown, like, there have been fair few moments in this season where he's dribbled past 2, 3, 4 players like in one like set there. I remember, I forget who it was against, but he had a really good set of 1-2s with Fabio Silva to set up what was almost a goal. I forget exactly what game this was in, but the intricacy of that play and being able to play off his teammates like that, and then obviously once again with the dribbling, kind of like we said, it creates chaos, and I think we do need a little bit more of that in this side. So yeah, I mean, I'd definitely be interested to see more of him in that sort of like box crashing like 8 role too.
Yeah, and like he's already passed his like record for most minutes in a season. The defensive numbers this year are like way below his career averages just because he's playing as an attacker. The dribble success is like above average. The average is like 44. He's at 49. That's a little bit of a concern with how many minutes he's played off the bench. But overall, like, it's just he's creating problems. He had over an expected assist. Like, he should have 3 goal contributions. He has 2. So it's not like he's underachieving in any way. It's almost like he has a little over an expected assist, doesn't have an assist yet. So like that's something he could get better at for sure, but like he's still at a solid amount. He's played like 6 or 7 90s. He's got a little over 1 expected assist, so like it's not bad. He's almost at 0.2 expected assists per 90, and that's not bad. Especially for a guy playing out of position. Because like his heat map is still more that of a left-sided 10 than a striker, so I'm happy with it, or a winger even. So let's get into discussing Tottenham quickly. I think Dortmund concede early, red card. So like a lot of your complaints, not that they're wrong, it's just that like it's a lot harder to watch than it is to like make a judgment about Borussia Dortmund as a team this year. So Borussia Dortmund lost to Tottenham. It's very disappointing, but I just feel like there's a lot too much being read into a game where you have a 14th minute goal and a, 20th minute, 26th minute, red card, like Borussia Dortmund, in all likelihood, would have looked very, very good in the second half had they had 11 men. Um, just because like that's the way these games go against like teams that are like similar in quality. But then Svensson gets sent off and it gets a little out of hand. But I wouldn't read too much into that.
I mean, I think the main complaint would be, just how easy it was for Thomas Frank's side to press Dortmund. What we're talking about is basically one of the, and I know we've complained about the defense this year as well, but still one of the best Dortmund defenses we've seen in quite some time. And I do think that it was far too easy for them to press us. Granted, once you have the red card, once again, it does make things very difficult. You can't play the same game plan that you were expecting to play. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a very unfortunate result. But the team that you're talking about here is basically, what are they, 15th in the Premier League or something like that? Like, there are teams absolutely dog walking this Tottenham side. And I think the main complaint many people will have will be also, I guess the optics of it. Like, let's not specifically talk about maybe Dortmund's performance here, but what it says, I guess, about, this disparity once again between the Bundesliga and the Premier League. I think that may be a bit of a sore spot for some people. I know it was to a degree for me as well, because once again, you're talking about the 15th placed or whatever Premier League side coming and winning, or well, not coming anywhere because we played away. But winning 2-0 basically, and it being a fairly meek performance from us overall. But once again, there is the red card to take into account, the early goal. Do I think that if Dortmund stay 11 men that it's a different result? I think we could have pulled off a win, 100%. But it's still, it's overall, I think it's just a sore spot and a disappointing result from a team that's been doing, for the most part, fairly well in the Champions League.
I mean, this is the team that's also like fifth in the Champions League right now. So I don't know how much you want to say like that. Oh, they're 15th in the Premier League. Like, the Premier League is so rich. Like, they have 20 good teams, and like that part of the financial disparity is there. But I think you get a man sent off inside the first half hour of a match. You've already conceded, and then you play badly. Like, that's a little different. Like, this team has been very good in the Champions League all year. So I don't really want to criticize too much or like read into like, oh, yeah, Dortmund can't compete with like the Premier League teams.
No, 100%, and that's not. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, the optics of it, that's the argument that's going to come out, and those are the feelings that are going to come out because of it. At the end of the day, like, even when you look at the red card, there were debates on as to whether or not it even should have been a red card, because I believe he does get ball first, but then again, once again, it studs up. So it's, there's a lot of things that went into it. Obviously, once again, you mentioned the early goal. Do I think it is the be-all, end-all definition of, Dortmund's, current form or overall performance in the Champions League? No, 100% not. But I do think it is an irritating result. And I do think that the optics of it, whether we want to, like, talk about it or not, they are there, and they're going to be talked about by other people. And people have already made their feelings very clear about that. But do I think that it was, the be-all, end-all result that, we have to bemoan? No. And I think that comes from, I guess, even me kind of being able to take a step back from that. Because at the time, I was very upset. I was like, this is ridiculous. How are you losing to Tottenham's Hotspur? Like, how is this happening? And I know we've lost to them in the past in the Champions League and all that. But just in terms of, like, the positions of where the teams are and how their seasons have gone, I would have hoped for a better result, but once again, because of circumstances, I get why we didn't get the performance that we wanted.
Yeah, that's fair. I think let's move on and get into something that we can be a little bit more positive about and talk about our star of the week. And I will let you go first. I have a sneaking suspicion of where you're going to go, but I could be wrong. It might not be Maxi Bayer, guys. Who could guess? I don't know.
You know, Eli, it's Maxi Bayer. And
Shocking.
shocker. I have my agenda. It's okay. I think this is a fantastic player. I love the fact that he's scoring more consistently now. And I do think that we might be on the cusp of seeing more of the Maxi Bayer that we saw in Hoffenheim prior to his move to Dortmund. Um, yeah, just big up him, big up the energy, big up the tenacity. And he's just, I don't know, he's just everything you want in a player. I know he's maybe not the most technically gifted, but he's still fairly technical. He still does have a good dribble in him every now and then. Um, but he's an absolute workhorse, and you need that in this side. And yeah, I'm just happy, just happy. Any day that Maxi Bayer scores is a good day for me. So Maxi, my star, 100%.
See, I want to say Fabio Silva because, he's missing from the loss this week and performs pretty well, like 4 shots in the win this weekend against Union. But, Brian, like there's only 2 hosts on the game this week, and I can't go niche. There's 2 players who I would have had as my top 2 performers in this match. I already talked about Gregor Kobel, so I got to go in a different direction. But Greg, you deserve a star of the week this week because
He
phenomenal,
does. He does, 100%.
phenomenal.
If I didn't have an agenda, I would have gone with him. And honestly, Greg's one of my favorite players too. So
Okay, well, he got talked about, so we don't need to continue on and wax lyrical, but we do have to talk about someone. We haven't said his name yet on this show, but, he just needs to put his name down on a little piece of paper, and then we can fill in everything around it and pretend that he signed a 6-year, 7-year contract. Because it's Nico Schlotterbeck, guys. Scores a goal in this one. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal finish.
I didn't even realize that was going in. I was like watching that. I was like, oh, it went wide. It's like, oh no, that's in the back of the net. It sneaked its way in. It was such a good shot.
And, what this guy does with his left foot is just, it's incredible. This wasn't his best passing match by any stretch of the imagination, but we already talked a little bit about, like, our defensive work in this match and our in possession stuff, so we don't need to get too much into that, but, Nico Schlotterbeck finishes the match as the captain, scores a goal, not a penalty, so he's got to be my star of the week. Phenomenal defensive performance as well.
Speaking of penalties, this might be controversial, but I do want to shout out Emre Can because I do think he's had quite a few better performances, but also he's been pivotal with those penalties. At the end of the day, it might be a little bit of a one-trick pony situation for him, but when we need it, it's big. So big up him for that. So I'm glad we have him on penalties.
Yeah, he played really bad right after I said, like, if you extend Emre Can as your, like, 5th choice center back, it's not bad. And I might be back onto that take. I never should have left. I was too reactionary. We just talked earlier in the show about not reacting to certain match events that are a little bit of outliers. I did that to Emre Can. Like, if he gets a 2-year extension on a significantly reduced wage and he's my 5th choice center back next year, I'm not bothered at all. And I don't think you should be either. I don't think he should necessarily get on the pitch every minute just for the penalties. Would I like a little bit more quality? Do I have him in my first choice backline? No. Well, yes and no to the latter. But overall, great performance. Deserves a contract extension to be like the 5th choice. I'm back on that. I'll say that.
I just wanted to shout him out because I know we're critical of him fairly often on here. So, credit where credit is due. When he has a better performance and it needs to be uplifted and he needs to get his flowers. So
yeah, and you know me as the contrarian I am. It's whatever the narrative is, I'm on the other side. And Brian, I'll let you go first again because I'm so gracious. Who is your dud of the week?
My dud's gonna be Yan Kuto. And the reason for that for me comes down to the Spurs game. I do think that he was very much bullied in that game. I think that his commitment to the defensive part of his game also wasn't great. And the instance that I think of when I'm saying that is, I believe it's like the 65th or 70th minute or something like that. There's a corner in our box, and you see him basically going like head first into the midriff of Randall Cole Muani and Christian Romero, and all this bluster basically to be like, oh yeah, I'm here. Like, you could even see it on the opposition players' faces, like, what is this guy doing? And all of that to let both of his men get away from him basically. And Romero actually had quite a good chance on goal from that as well. He's basically like walking in that instance, and he allows both players that he was marking to get out and try and attack the ball basically. So when his, I guess, defensive frailties when it comes to his physicality is compounded by something like that, I start thinking that, this is starting to be a bit of a problem. Granted, at the end of the day, he's had better games, and I do believe this is a better season for him overall. Just thinking about that specific game, I don't think it was a very strong performance from him. Honestly, I've been saying this for a little while now. I think that perhaps maybe we should try playing him a little bit more forward. Maybe an appearance on the wing here or there. I'm not fully convinced of him right now as a defender, just because of those instances where he does get bullied. He doesn't seem fully committed to the defensive part of the game. So yeah, that'll be my dud.
I don't know. I don't even know if he can really play on the wing because of his size. Again, it's like such an issue where he goes up against a Premier League team. They're known for signing bigger, more physical players. And if you play him on the wing, my concerns are essentially that right now in our system, like if we had a 4-4-2, could he play on the wing? Like, then maybe you can get away with a little bit more. But right now, if you play him as one of our wingers in a 3-4-3, like you look at Maxi Bayer, Fabio Silva, Karim Adeyemi, these are all guys that run inside at center backs with the ball. And Karim Adeyemi's smaller, but he's a little bit bigger than Jan Koto, and he has genuinely elite pace. Jan Koto is not slow necessarily, but he doesn't have that elite pace. He's also not as good of a dribbler. He's not as two-footed, so he can't really carry the ball. Like he can carry the ball out wide, and into space certainly, but he can't do that, I think, against more defensive-minded players, and he can't do it in more central areas because of that one-footedness. So I don't love him there, and like he was creative against Girona, but like he's never been creative enough, and certainly not able to kind of like float around to be so creative that he's like in that wide area and doing what he would need to do creatively to make up for the fact that he can't do the same things and make the same runs in central areas in a productive way. Like Maxi Bayer scores the ball in this match because he's able to run in field and get on the end of something. Like Jan Koto can't really do that to the same effect because he's just going to get bullied.
So the reason I suggested, I guess, playing him more so on the wing or in a more further forward position is because I do believe there is a creativity to his game that we could really benefit from. I mean, I do think his crosses have been quite good. I do think putting the ball into the box to create chances. Granted, I don't have his, chance creation numbers in front of me. But just from what I have seen during games, I think that is a positive aspect of his play. I think perhaps then if we're having this discussion about, the type of players he was up against, I guess, with a Premier League side like Tottenham, perhaps maybe that physicality was a bit more exploited because of the physical nature of the players that he was up against. But I still think that he does have the asset and tools to play a little bit further forward and do that well. Once again, at the end of the day, I think that perhaps like him playing in that more wing-back position kind of needs to be looked at in terms of the opposition, like or Kovac, I guess, has to look at whether or not to deploy him based on the opposition that we're facing. And I think perhaps in this situation, maybe he was thrown into the deep end a little bit with regards to who we were facing. That being said, I don't think we should completely forego him at wing back because once again, he has had better performances. But my reservations still kind of stand with that. That physicality has been a problem on more than one occasion, not just against Premier League sides, but also teams in the Bundesliga. So I don't know, it's a bit of a catch-22 because, like I said, I do think he does still have the skills to play further forward. Is he, a better choice over the players that we usually have playing in a more wide position? Probably not. But I do think he offers more things that those players don't. More chance creativity, more crosses going into the box. You don't see Maxi Bayer necessarily doing that all the time. You don't see Karim Adeyemi doing that all the time because their main aim, once again, or not main aim, I guess, is not main aim, but more so like their prerogative seems to be in those positions to score and drift more inward rather than coming out wide and putting the ball into the box. So.
Yeah, I agree with you on the issues. I just don't think there's really a solution for it anywhere on the pitch because if you move him anywhere, you're going to expose the fact that his left foot doesn't really exist at the top level, if that makes sense. But I have a dud of the week too. It's a little harsh, but you get a red card. There's only really one way I can go. And it's Daniel Svensson. I don't really view this as a quality issue on the player as much as it is a rotation issue with the team. Because, Bensebaini is one of my first choice center backs. And he gets the start against Tottenham. He's just back from AFCON. You got to give him some rest. He's not the youngest player anymore. And you don't want to run him into the ground. But we're also running Daniel Svensson into the ground a little bit. I don't know exactly where he ranks among the squad leaders, but we're talking about a lot of minutes this guy's played already.
He's played a lot of 90s, yeah.
Yeah, so he's got 533 minutes in the Champions League. So he's at 2,000 minutes, which is a full starting season, and we're 2 matches past halfway in the Bundesliga. So he's gonna be on pace for 2,500 plus Bundesliga minutes, and we're talking about another 700 minutes from the Champions League, another couple hundred from the Cup. We're talking about a 3,000 plus minute campaign here, comfortably 3,000, getting up towards that 3,500 minute mark before you count international games, before you count the Club World Cup. That's too much. That's way too much. And, we'll get into another news, but actually let's jump ahead now because we're on the topic. And we'll start our other news. Kawa Prates has joined for 12 million, including bonuses. Where do you see this player fitting in the squad? It's not 100%, I think, that he's joining now, but I have to imagine with the fee being agreed, and especially with the Anselmino news, do you view him more playing center back or left back? Because Daniel Svensson right now, we're talking about center back type minutes for a guy playing every single match at left back.
I don't think it's not slated, or the transfer I should say is not slated to go through until the summer. So it's not really something, maybe now with Anselmino, they might have to move it up. Granted, that's not just on Dortmund for that to be agreed, right? Yep. But the player is able to play both center back and left back, kind of like what we see from Bensebaini. But I do think there probably will be more minutes for left back because I think they have come to realize because that Svensson has been playing a crap ton of minutes and he does need a rest. And like you said, Bensebaini and Schlotterbeck are also my top choice for a center back pairing, or what I'm trying to say basically is I prefer Bensebaini in center back. I know we're playing a back three right now, so he should be playing those positions with I guess Prates playing in that left back role to give Svensson some time off the pitch. But once again, I don't know if this is something that Dortmund will go through and try and speed up. A lot of what I've been seeing is that they're not going to try and sign anyone to, off-put the loss of Anselmino. And speaking of which, I do think it is a big loss because I do think that this is a talented player. He probably would have, over the course of the season, I might have wanted to see him get a little bit more minutes, give Anton some time off as well. And I do think that overarchingly, like if it came down to him playing well this half of the season and possibly staying onward, I would have liked him to become one of the starting players. Because so far from what I've seen, I've liked a lot of what I've seen from him. So I do think it is a big loss, and I do think that Dortmund would benefit from moving a move like Pratesh up forward if they can. But once again, it doesn't just it's not basically it's can't even speak. It's not just up to Dortmund at this point whether or not that ends up being the case. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little unfortunate. I think mathematically, in terms of players in the squad, they have the numbers there at center back. It's just the one issue is that I think you and I certainly want Ben Sebaini to be able to start as many games as the left-sided center back and then put Schlotterbeck in the middle and have it be Anton on the right, and you're kind of rotating through. Ideally, it would have been Anselmino probably because he's so fast. He just covers so much ground that you can have him cover the right with that left-sided center back in the middle being Schlotterbeck. But that's not going to be the case. So I guess you're going to have to see Ben Sebaini cover over at left back. And then that makes the numbers look a little bit light in the center of the park. But we saw Filippo Mane here for the first time in a while. And that's exciting. Like, that's an academy player. You have some other guys in the academy that are thought highly of. So that's pretty interesting. But let's get back into some match predictions and talk about the Inter game because that's coming up. They signed a center back very recently, Croatian youth player. I don't think he's quite senior team ready, so we won't have to worry about him yet. But some other side's doing some business. But business on the pitch, like what are your expectations for that?
I mean, Inter is doing well to my understanding in Serie A. So I mean, obviously it's not going to be an easy game. This is a talented side with a lot of talented players. It is a home game for Dortmund, so there's always that going for us. And I do think with the Tottenham loss, it would be the most Dortmund thing ever for them to go out and possibly try and get a 2-1 or 3-1 win here against Inter. And considering I'm not the type of person that likes to bet against Dortmund or say that anything negative is going to happen, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Dortmund finish off this phase of the Champions League strong with a 3-1 win.
Ugh, big yawn for me. But I am excited for this match. Well, not really because I have to work during it. But, I do think Dortmund can do something here. Am I a known Serie A hater? No, but I could be. Marcus Thuram will get to play against Dortmund. He's used to playing in the Ruhr Valley, so that's exciting for those that care about that. I don't know. It's I could see this match going either way. I think this is very much a coin flip game. If I was a betting person, I'd keep my money out. I wish I had some more advanced statistics to talk about, but I can give you the basic ones. Like Dortmund have played a little bit more exciting games, conceding 15 goals to Inter 7 and scoring 19 to their 13. So a little bit better in that regard. The points are similar. I mean, we'll see. We're on a point less than them with a win. That would be very good because you don't want to end up playing whoever's going to be 9th through 12th, because if some of the sides you expect to win, you're talking about Newcastle, PSG, Chelsea, Barcelona, Man City, Atletico Madrid. Those are the teams you're going to have to play in that playoff if Dortmund lose this match. Potentially, if some of the teams below them win, which some of them will, but it really goes down to about how many. I think actually on goal differential, we're kind of safe from doing so. So we're probably going to play one of these mid-tier teams, I think, which would be Juventus, Galatasaray, Karabag, Marseille, AC Milan, or not AC Milan, excuse me, AS Monaco, potentially even a Leverkusen. Like these are kind of that tier of club is who Dortmund can expect to play. Um, I don't really know. I think this match could go either way. My score prediction 2-2.
Yeah, I mean it's not going to be an easy match. There are a few players that I do want to highlight for our listeners. So Piotr Zielinski, Polish international, having quite a good
Of
season for
course.
Inter. I had to, you know. I mean, listen, this is a player that I wanted at Dortmund for forever, so I had to shout him out there. Obviously, a player that's in form, someone that we would need to look out for. Very versatile, can play at 10. I think he's playing more of a central midfield role for Inter right now. Lautaro Martinez obviously goes without saying, talented striker. And they do have a young Pio Esposito that I've seen a lot more about in just overall being talked about and stuff like that. So they do have a good balance of like youth and experience. So it's once again not going to be an easy game. But I do think that we can come away with a win, and kind of like with what you were saying with some of the earlier options that you mentioned. I think it just that we might be able to play, or that we might be playing. I think it'd be best for us to get a result here and hopefully get us as far away from a bracket where we'd have to play like a Man City or PSG as possible. So
Yeah, that's fair. I think what is most likely to happen in a negative situation is like Dortmund somehow win this match and then they end up having to play like Napoli somehow because they win and they get like the most difficult game there. But Napoli's like, I don't know who they're playing on the last day, but right now, as it stands, they would be out of the Champions League. Um, but that's a way it could go bad for us. But let's talk about the Heidenheim game because Borussia Dortmund are playing one of the worst teams in the Bundesliga coming up. Um, but they're facing their former player, Dion Ramai. I think he still gets to play in goal.
yeah, I mean, just looking up here because I'm curious to see where they are in the table. But like you said, they're pretty low. I want to make sure I get the actual
They're
accuracy.
bottom.
They're dead bottom. I mean, just based off of that, right? You should expect it to be a win. I believe it's also a home game. So once again, yeah, it should be just another game that Dortmund are using as kind of that kind of to try and close that gap against Bayern. Hopefully, because we did close it a little bit this past weekend, so perhaps maybe this could be another good opportunity for that if Bayern do end up slipping up again. Is that likely? No, but still, you need to win the games and against the teams that you're playing, right? No matter who it is. In this case, I do think that this is a great, once again, just opportunity for Dortmund to continue to build that points tally for the season. So I expect it to be at least like this might end up being a 3 or 4-0 win. But I will be curious to see how Ramai does in this game, obviously. But I won't really be rooting for him to do well. I kind of want us to stat pad right now. So
Yeah, he's been a marginally like to face that much XG, you're definitely getting a statistically significant sample size. Like they have conceded 42 goals, and he is positive in terms of his goals prevented. Only by 0.36, but like Dortmund spent 3 million and they signed a Bundesliga average shot stopper. Like that's great. That's fantastic business because the worst thing that happens is they sell him this summer for 10 to 15 million. And at his age, like you might be looking at the higher end of that because he's only entering his peak. Like they will have spent $0 on him, have paid like $2 worth of his salary after the loans, and they're gonna get more than their money back by a lot. So that's solid business, honestly. Um, but that said, like they're horrific defensively. Like they're not the worst attacking team by the underlying numbers in the league. We just played those two teams. It's St. Pauli and Union. I believe Heidenheim are the third worst. So don't have access to the data anymore, so can't confirm it. But they're right up there, and they are like the worst defensive team in the Bundesliga. I'm pretty sure, like by goals, by expected goals conceded, by any metric. Like, this is a match that at home, if you don't win this like 3 or 4, like you're having a sad day. Like, you should not be pleased with yourself to beat these guys by 2 goals. I'll say that. Score prediction, I guess I'll not cop out. I'll say 4-1.
Yeah. 3-0, 4-0 for me. I think this is actually another good opportunity for Koval to get another clean sheet. So, yeah.
Absolutely. We touched on it earlier, but Aaron Anselmino recalled by Chelsea. Unfortunate stuff. Unfortunate. You saw the video, dude. That just feel bad for a player when you're like the moment of regret where he's like, yeah, I really signed the 6 to 8 year contract with this team that is so intent on sabotaging my career and solely exists as an entity to make money off of me. Oh my,
it really looked like, yeah, that he didn't want to leave. I think he was enjoying his time at Dortmund. And he was having an impact here. Obviously, I don't think he's going to have anywhere near the impact for Chelsea. We kind of talked about it offline too. He's not going to get anywhere near the minutes he would have gotten here. I think they're not necessarily happy with their own center back situation. But once again, like, I don't know. I don't see them giving, like, even though that they called him back, I just don't see him getting the minutes. I think you mentioned in the chat, though, that, that doesn't necessarily mean the door is fully closed on a possible future, instance where Dortmund try and go in for Anselmino. I as much as I like the player, I hate dealings with Chelsea. So I guess my middle ground with that would be get him out of there and never come back at this point, because the dealings with them have not been great as of late. So, yeah, it's like you said, unfortunate is the operative word there. It's just, yeah, he was doing quite well for us.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think he's so much worse than Benoit Badiashile or Trevor Chalobah, who I rate less than everyone else in the football world seems to, though I don't think he's terrible. Like, those are not top 5 necessarily center backs. In my opinion, in the Premier League, they also have some guys on that are injured, like Levi Cole is out with an ACL. They have Uriel Hato there, who's a very highly rated 19-year-old. Wesley Fofana is currently fit there. Then they have Josh Akiampong. Sorry, I don't speak. I think it's a Nigerian origin. The player is English, and they have Tosin Adarabioyo, who's also out. Axel Disasi's fit. Like, those are the guys he's going to have to compete with. That's a lot of experienced Premier League players, and this is a guy that's not had any real experience with the Chelsea first team, so he's not used to playing with these guys. He's not used to playing in a back 4 because he hasn't done it since he was in Argentina. He's been playing in a 5. It's a completely different system, completely different team. And so, like, I just don't see when he's getting up to speed to get over 500 minutes in a back 4 when I just read one. Okay, so I'm not going to count Akiampong because he's, like, similar amount of minutes to Anselmino. So, like, you still have Disasi, Badiashile, Trevoh Chalobah, Wesley Fofana, Uriel Hato, that are all... That's just, like, the fit players. You got 5. Tosin Adarabioyo is going to come back this season. Like, Colwell's done. But you have 5 or 6 players that all have more senior minutes than him. Granted, Hato's have mainly come in the Netherlands. And I don't know if he's, like, physically developed enough to play center back in the Premier League yet. Like, he's probably mainly played left back for Chelsea, I want to say. But still, like, we're talking about 4 players over him for a back 4. Like, if you had 4 and you were playing a 3, that's a different thing. I don't understand it. Even from, like, the Chelsea point of view, like you're talking about like developing these players to sell them on because they don't care about winning anymore. You've clearly seen that with the decision making at that club. And we're talking about Hato, like what did they spend on him? 50, 60 mil. He has 280 minutes. And he's not really competition for Anselmino because he's playing on the other side. And even if he was, they clearly aren't playing him. But I think that's kind of what you can expect from Anselmino is like 8 appearances, 2 starts, 280 minutes. Like that stat line would not shock me for Anselmino for Chelsea this year.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that treating players like a stock is bad, but teach their own. Next up, Nico Schlotterbeck has set a deadline for decision on his future, saying, "I have set myself a deadline, but I'm not going to say when that is. Definitely before the summer, though. I feel at home here. It won't be an easy decision. I'm a gut person. I'll sit down with Dad and Kevin, his brother, and then make a decision. I'm not quite sure what that will be yet."
It's the first time he's mentioned anything about it, so well, not first time necessarily, but first time in a while. So
yeah, I'm nervous. I said if he didn't re-sign by the end of the winter break, I'd start to get a little like I'd be like, I'm like 60-40 that he still does. But we're getting to the 31st, which is when I probably start to drop off. But apparently his date is a lot later than mine, or I thought his date would be.
So I mean, a lot of what I've been seeing is like a lot of the clubs that were initially sort of like said to be interested in him, so like Bayern, Real Madrid, they're not like there's nothing really going on there right now. I think that Bayern and Madrid's priorities are different right now, and that doesn't seem to like Schlotterbeck doesn't seem to be their first choice as of right now. Obviously, with Bayern, a lot of that had to do with Upamecano, which I think is I don't know whether he's actually signed the extension or not yet, but I think they were saying he was a lot closer to signing that, so that kind of like makes it make a little less sense for Schlotterbeck to go there. And then I think Real Madrid's priorities have kind of changed a bit. I don't know the details of that because I don't really follow Madrid like that. But that was the brief thing that I did see on that. The other interesting thing that I think may play a role in this, and this isn't necessarily, I guess, a good thing for Dortmund, is I've been seeing more and more reports of them, granted, once again, take this with a grain of salt, it is Bild, of them being more open to including release clauses with their contracts to compete more so with the likes of Bayer Leverkusen and RB Leipzig for signings. It's interesting that we're doing that because that seems 100% like a step backwards. It's like you're kind of playing down to the competition versus trying to exemplify yourself as being above them, which is what we have been for the longest time. I do understand, obviously, that there's like, a different market and all that. But on the flip side of all that, I mean, there have been inklings of news coming out or rumors as well saying that, Dortmund might put a release clause in Schlotterbeck's contract. So it's like, does that, allow him to stay a little bit longer? Possibly, but once again, at what cost? I don't know. It's a bit of a murky situation overall. I do hope that he does sign, and I do think that at the end of the day, release clauses aren't something that I'd go for any player. But if I guess we get another year of Schlotterbeck, even with that release clause, which might end up being a thing maybe 2 summers from now, is it a good thing? I mean, it's a good thing that he stays. It's just, yeah, I don't know. It's a murky situation.
I think that the reality is almost every player nowadays wants to move up to one of the top tier clubs, being Manchester City, PSG, Real Madrid, Barcelona. Like, those are the clubs that people want to go to. And you don't ever want to not sign a player because they like if you're not signing a player because they want a release clause, like you're just saying that you don't want good players, because if you're able to demand a release clause, you're a good player. Like not everyone's doing that.
I think my thing with the release clauses is it kind of keeps Dortmund at this sort of status quo state and doesn't allow for the club to move up into the upper echelons.
Well, let me explain how it does real quick.
Well, hold on. Let me just finish what I'm saying first. Then you can go into it. I'm happy to listen because I just don't want to lose the thought. Because at the end of the day, if you're breaking up your project every year or two, because at the end of the day, we've seen some players go places. I mean, there's already talk about, just using this player as an example, Jan Diomande from Leipzig going for 100 million in the summer. That's a lot of money, and that's great and all that. But if you end up having, so many different players that are pivotal to your squad that are on release clauses, no matter how hefty they are, that means you are scrapping your project every year or two. I'm not exactly a fan of that. I do think that, a player like Schlotterbeck, granted, he's been at Dortmund a lot longer than a year or two. I think, what is it now? Going on 5 years now, if not longer. Because I forget exactly.
It's not 5. It's like
4 years.
3.
He's been here more than 3 years. He's been here more than 3 years. 100%.
Okay, so it was the title, the failed title in year 1, Champions League final year 2, sucky year last year 3.
So
this is his
going on
4th year.
So 4 or 5 years. So he's basically been around that time frame. Yeah. That's what I'm getting at. Like that is a substantial amount of time. But I do think that if you are a team that's trying to compete, having to rebuild your squad every 2 years is not conducive to being able to compete and have that, or just conducive to the ability to compete is what I'm trying to say. If you're trying to narrow the gap against a team like Bayern, which has substantially more financial resources, then I think you want to move away from that as opposed to kind of playing down to the teams that you are trying to compete against or out-compete for that, second position and possibly that title. Because I do think there is a financial gap, and I do think there is a prestige gap between a team like Borussia Dortmund and an RB Leipzig. I don't think we should be playing down to Leipzig's level, personally speaking, with the release clauses. Has it done well for them in terms of finances? Sure. Has it done well for them in terms of competition? Debatable, because they sign a bunch of talented players, but it's a completely hodgepodge group sometimes, and it's like they don't, once again, there's no cohesion with them. They don't perform to the level that you would expect that talent to perform to. And I think that to a degree we've seen a little bit of that problem at Dortmund as well. I don't think we should feed into it. I think we should move away from that, personally speaking. Feel free to go ahead and...
Yeah, so Bayern have actually turned over like half their squad in the last 3 years. That's normal. Like, turning over half your squad over a 3-year period is normal. And no, that's like actually normal. Like, you can look at pretty much any squad, and every 3 years they are turning over half their squad. And the reason that is because you're talking about players peaking between the ages of 23 and 26 for outfield players. So if a player is very good, you have a very short peak, and then at some point they're in physical decline. So typically you're signing a player, getting them for a couple years before their peak, maybe a couple years during, and then you sell them on at the top of their value before the decline. Or you're signing a peak player and you're selling him off before the full decline. Like, that's a normal thing. Like, most teams, unless you are the richest of the richest, are turning over 75% of their squad every 3 to 4 years. And the more important point here is, what does a release clause allow you to do? Because you can have a release clause where Nico Schlotterbeck signs right now and it's active in the first summer, and instead of him getting sold this summer for 70 million euros, where you have to then retool your squad again, you can have him sign a release clause that's not active for 2 years. So you essentially guarantee yourself 2 more years of Nico Schlotterbeck by signing him, giving him an extension with a release clause. Maybe you get a little bit less money, like you get 70 instead of 100 million euros. or something like that, or you get 60 instead of 100 million euros, but you get 2 extra years of Nico Schlotterbeck. And to me, that is what matters more. That's what you have to try and push for to try and win trophies. Because if you talk about the last time Dortmund signed a player with a release clause, who was it? Erling Haaland, I believe. I could be wrong there. But the last player I remember signing with like a release clause that like got activated,
it was Haaland, yeah.
And did he win a trophy of Borussia Dortmund or did he not? Because I believe he did win a cup.
No, he did. But I mean, I will disagree with the point that you're making. Maybe this is more of something that's become more of a thing now. But when Dortmund had that squad between 2012 and I want to say maybe 2016, 17, there was turnover, but I wouldn't say it was 75% of the squad. There were some big pieces that left. But I do want to say that for the most part, it was a fairly stable squad throughout. It wasn't every 2-3 years that Dortmund were basically a completely brand new group or a half new group. I feel that maybe that's more so something that happens now, but I do think that there is, a level of success that comes from having a squad that has played together for a longer period of time, as opposed to having those new heads come in and having those periods of instability. I guess maybe that's just my preference. I don't think that that's a good thing. I think that, at the end of the day, having players there for a long time, like Marco Reus, having players there for a long time, I'm going to say Hummels, but obviously he left to Bayern, but then came back. He spent a lot of years at the club. Like, having those players there are also, I guess, some sort of like carrot on a stick for new players to come in and do that and come in and play at that squad. Like, even if you look at Julian Brandt, right? He says very openly one of the main reasons he came to Dortmund was because, I could play with a Marco Reus or a Mats Hummels. Like, that was his whole thing. If you don't have those mainstays at a club, I think that you kind of have a detriment to that as well. Well, it ends up being, just I don't know. I just don't agree with the turnover being a good thing overall.
So 50 to 75% is normal, but like there's a difference between 50 and 75% of like your starting 11 getting turned over, because I'm talking about your total squad. So if you look at a total squad, it's going to end up being 50 to 75%, even during the years you talked about. But if you look at Bayern and you talk about, like I just said, it's like half their squad has been turned over in the last 3 years. You look at the players that have actually stayed there, it's Joshua Kimmich, Serge Gnabry, Leon Goretzka, and like some of the players I'm naming there, like Alphonso Davies, Dayot Upamecano, and Manuel Neuer. Like, the overall majority of these players, granted some of them I think are disrespected, and I'm not going to comment on that, but like we're talking about players that have won almost everything there is to win in the game. But like that's the quality of player they're keeping, so they're still keeping the core. And like it is very valuable to have guys to play with each other year after year. And like that's the importance of having a good core. And my point with the release clause is like you extend Schlotterbeck, you keep part of that core around for an extra 2 years. Like that should be your goal there. That's if you
get the 2 years. That's my other thing too, because I don't expect, like, if there's a release clause, like I don't expect him to be like, yeah, let's do it in 2 years. I think especially considering there's been all this interest around him, depending obviously what direction Dortmund go in. Like if obviously they become more competitive, then yeah, maybe perhaps even if there is a release clause, like in the next summer he doesn't leave. But I think it is optimistic to think that, he'll say like, yeah, I'll sign for a release clause and stay here for 2 more years, 100%. I don't know. I think that is optimistic.
So I think that you essentially quantify the release clause at a certain dollar amount, and you're only willing to negotiate to a certain dollar amount. So like, let's say he leaves next summer. So you're essentially getting 1 more year, because instead of selling him with 1 year left on his contract, you sign him to an extension and you have a release clause and you only get 1 more year. Like, how much is that year worth to you? How much is it worth to him? You can set that at, let's say, 100 to 120 million euros. And then if you want to get him for a second year, maybe now we're dropping the release clause down to 80 mil. So you get 2 years of Nico Schlotterbeck. He leaves for 80 mil, which is like, for a center back of his caliber, a lot of clubs will be interested at that point, in theory. if you're getting him for 3 years, maybe all of a sudden that release clause drops to 60 million. Like, you can have the release clause slowly drop each year, or you can have it not exist until the second year for a lower dollar amount. And that's something that you negotiate on, and you have to find a balance. And at a certain point for Borussia Dortmund, I would agree with you, and it's no longer worth it to have the release clause. But there has to be a dollar amount with the release clause for it to be worth it, because otherwise you can essentially have the player go into his the last year of his contract this summer. Everyone knows he's not re-signing, and like, you're going to get a sizable fee for him, but is it going to be 70 million euros? Is it going to be 80 million euros? It's going to be less than any Dortmund fan wants, just because it's the last year of his contract and you know he's not renewing.
I guess the compromise for me would be, because I mean, you mentioned Erling Haaland, and I think that is an example of a release clause where it's worth it. And that's kind of what I was getting at with Schlotterbeck in particular, because it's like, yeah, it sucks that it's a release clause, but like you're saying, if you do get an extra year or two, it's not the be all end all. My issue would be, us starting to go down a slippery slope where we take the RB Leipzig route, where a lot of different players, a lot of key players in the starting 11 end up having release clauses. Because that's kind of been their model for like a lot of players. I mean, we saw that with Dayot Upamecano. I believe he left for a release clause. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I thought he left for free.
Or maybe he left for free, but Gvardiol left for a release clause. I know that for a fact. I think Šeško also left for a release clause, or had a release clause or something like that. Then they also have Lukeba, I think now, Castillo Lukeba, who also has a release clause. And I feel like it's just having a lot of key players with that release clause, and there is just kind of, like I said, a slippery slope to go down. Because if you end up having a situation where 3 or 4 players are picked off, right? Yeah, it's great. You have a massive windfall of money, but now you have to bring in players that, maybe don't hit the exact same level or don't jive with the club the same way. And you are basically restarting your project. And like, you can't expect to have the same results. So let's say they finish 3rd in that season or something. We've seen them drop down to 6th, to 7th, to outside the Champions League spots. And having those release clauses and getting that windfall, I guess, help them weather it monetarily. But does that improve, I guess, the optics of the squad and I guess convincing players to go there? I mean, yeah, you'll convince players to go there for 2-3 years to use it as a springboard. But is that all that Leipzig want to be? Is that all Dortmund want to be? And perhaps that is the Leipzig model, and that's fine. My thing is, at this point, I feel like, especially with where Dortmund are right now and all the progress that they made, they should be going towards the upper echelons versus kind of playing down to there. So I guess, like I said, the sort of middle ground for me would be like, be very specific about who you give these release clauses to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think there was also talk about giving Adeyemi a release clause or something like that in an extension. Do I think that should happen? Absolutely not. I don't think we should be giving Karim Adeyemi a release clause.
Oh, I do, but I think it's because, like, granted the speed is so elite, but, like, I worry for him after the age of 26. Like, I would want to sell him I do not want to risk Karim Adeyemi post 27, because I feel like the injury history is, like, not necessarily a big concern for the next, like, 3 years. Like, if I have Karim Adeyemi at my club for the next 4 years, right now he's like 24, you get him through 28, like, I'm okay with that, because, like, the last year I think would be a bit of a risk, but at a certain point you want to cash in on him, and getting him through his age 27 season I think would be ideal. Like, his speed is so elite that I'm not worried about him necessarily becoming slow during the next 4 or 5 years if that's the contract he signs. I would be a little concerned that past that he's going to start to decline, and like, if you sell him at age 27 and he has a down year, I would not be surprised. That said, I could see him, just because he is so fast, playing a little bit longer, but playing less. So like, I think the release clause, like, it all depends on what the dollar amount is and how it looks and everything.
That's fair.
And I think there's a difference between every player that you sign, like a Leipzig, getting a release clause, like every player of note you sign with like the smallest reputation getting a release clause. Like, we don't need to sign mediocre center back prospects and give them release clauses. Not to be too mean to Castello, but he's good, but he's not a release clause player. And then Dortmund can go in other directions, and Dortmund also have the option, or not the option, but they have the business model of signing players that are a couple years older, a little bit more proven, and maybe aren't such highly touted prospects, but are still like elite type prospects. Like a Carney Chukwuemeka is an example, like a Maxi Bayer. And those guys are less likely to get release clauses because they're not like elite teenagers.
Yeah.
At least when they're being signed. And I think like just because you're giving it to Schlotterbeck or Adeyemi or like an otherworldly teenager does not mean you start giving it to every single player you sign.
Yeah, and I think it's just about precedent for me. You don't want to set the wrong precedent, so.
Yeah, and like there is a world where you give it to everyone, but like you can start giving out, like in Spain, they have mandatory release clauses for every player. You could just say, okay, like you want a release clause, like 130 to some like 19-year-old that's like a decent prospect. Like if you want it, that's what it's gonna be. Because then that way, like your worst case scenario is like, oh, what? Someone activates 130 million euro release clause, like they did with essentially Dembele, who didn't have a release clause. But
I also think players aren't stupid though. Like if you're coming in as a 17-year-old and they're like, yeah, I want a release clause, I don't think they're gonna be okay with them being like, yeah, 130, because it's unlikely for that to be triggered. The whole point of them having like release clauses, they want something that's realistic, right? For them to possibly have an out. So
yeah, but at the end of the day, it's like about how much negotiating leverage the player has. And if we're talking about these prospects that are not like the most highly rated, like they're highly rated, but they're not like the guy, then how much leverage are they going to have to say, I will only sign this if you give me a 80 million euro release clause instead of like 130? Because Sebastian Kehl can say, I'm going to go talk to some other guy, because at that, like as you drop down the tiers, you're getting less guarantee, and we can't necessarily afford like Erling Haaland type guaranteed young star anymore, just because of the way those guys get priced and moved.
Yeah, and I guess like that's with, and once again, this is build, right? So take it with a grain of salt. I guess that's what concerns me, because I wouldn't want a player like Cal Pratesh coming in and having like a release clause put in his contract, because I think that with what Bild was suggesting, that's kind of the direction that Dortmund were wanting to go in, or according to their report, right? To become more competitive, to do that whole Leipzig, Leverkusen release clause to everybody model. And that's my thing. That's what I would hope that they would stray away from. Like kind of like what we're saying, if it's like a reasonable release clause for a star player that keeps them at the club for an additional 2 years on top of what he's already been at, in the case of Schlotterbeck, you know, if that's what it has to be, it has to be. Do I like it? No, but do I understand it? Yes.
Okay, so we've talked about Prates. We have one last story for you guys. Julian Durnville loaned out to FC Basel and assisted the winning goal in his first minutes with the club. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Very happy to hear that for the player. I have nothing really else to say about it, though.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to put it in there to give him his flowers. Obviously, talented youngster. I hope he does well at Basel and can come back and have an impact.
Absolutely. But let's give you our fantasy leaders. Week 19, I did only finish in 12th, but I'm still moving up towards the top 5. I don't know if I'll get there, but another solid week for me personally. Stags reserves finished first. Arenas United in second. Junior Inteligente in third. Last FC, still not last, consistent top 5 finisher, in fourth, and KKPBG in fifth. So pretty solid. I'm looking to move up towards those top 5.
Just out of curiosity, where did Pints of Bayer finish?
On the week? Ooh, might have to do some scrolling there.
Damn.
Let's see. Ooh, below me. Terrible. He finished in 16th.
Damn. Overall?
Yeah, overall on the week, and overall on the league, he's still top 5. He's 3rd.
Okay, fair. So we're still doing good.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say his government name, but
it's a damn good name.
That one I do know. I also have a friend in 7th. So, BVB and DC's fantasy skills are honestly pretty good. 3 of the top 12. That's heavy representation.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. Where's New York, Brian?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, that'll do it for us. It was a pleasure talking to you today, must be said.
Yeah, likewise.
Make sure you follow us, rate us 5 stars, all that stuff, and have a good one.
Jadon Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce out. Another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond
Jetzt
compare.
kommt das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von Inso an Götze.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a goal!